Hello. Today we have our volume versus scoring video. It's back, but this week with running backs. I am very excited for this video. You can use it for trades, start sits, whatever your heart desires. But let's get into it. Starting off at the very top, the number one guy in volume. Who's surprised? It's Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, I really only need one stat to show. I don't know if the most underrated player is the correct title for him right now, but something similar, which sounds insane for a guy that is the RB2 in scoring right now. But that one stat is this. Last year, in this volume rank, Alvin Kamara's expected fantasy points per game was 19.5. He had the number one in the entire NFL at 19.5. Christian McCaffrey through 3 weeks is at 27 and a half. So he is underperforming compared to his volume, not by a ton, but 27 and a half. Like, what is that? 33% better than the number one volume in the NFL last year? Like, he's getting his OG volume when he was that not just RB1, but RB1 by a mile. I love him right now. As long as he's healthy, like he would probably be my number one overall running back for the rest of the way. It just depends on his health. If you guaranteed everybody in the NFL stay healthy, then yeah, he would be that number one overall player for me. He's incredible. The volume is there. The targets are insane this year without George Kittle right now. That'll decrease a little bit when Brock Purdy and George Kittle are back, but other things will increase, like the offense in general, more scoring opportunities. He got tackled at the one 3 times yesterday. It's going to come around. It's going to be even better. And right now, he's the RB2. I'm excited for him. That next guy is Jonathan Taylor, who another player. Perfect. Daniel Jones is the key to all of this, basically. With Anthony Richardson, his goal line attempts, his targets, everything important really goes down. But right now, Daniel Jones, he's taking a little bit of that goal line work. I don't think it'll be as much as it even is. I think it'll be better in terms of the goal line work. But they're putting up a ton of points. They have a great offensive line, a great offense, which just is a surprise in general. And it's made him the number one running back overall right now. But that volume is also number two behind this great offensive line. He is fifth in missed tackles forced per attempts, and that is on the number one rushing volume. He has more carries than anybody in the NFL. Another one where if you have him, congrats. I would consider buying him high too. Jahmyr Gibbs is at RB4. He has the third best volume. It is better than what it was last year. So I want you to hear that. It is better this year for Jahmyr Gibbs than it was last year, which he was the RB1 last year in points per game because Monty went down those last 3 games, but he was still top five with them. But when we're comparing it, last season, his expected points per game with David Montgomery was 14.2. He obviously overproduced because he's Jahmyr Gibbs on an incredibly good offense. But this year, that 14.2 expected points per game has jumped up to 18.7 so far. Would have been one of the best in the NFL this year or last year. And this year, it obviously is RB3. It's only going to get better. Another one where like his talent, that offense is still good. His talent is incredible. That offensive line looks a little better than what it has that first week, especially obviously. But again, another one where if you want to buy high on Jahmyr Gibbs, I support it. Really, any of these top three guys. I like it in general. It's wheels up. Bijan, very close behind. Bijan's still incredible. Top five running back this year and top five volume, the number four volume. He has 18 targets. A lot of his production is coming through the receiving right now. So third most among running back. He is number one in terms of efficiency in general, though. Number one in tackles avoided per attempt. So still an incredible talent. The offense isn't as good, but right now he leads that offense in rushing and receiving. That's a tough thing to do. So Bijan, maybe not as many scoring opportunities, but the rushing is still there. Incredible talent and amazing receiving. So there are some errors that we have to deal with that the other three guys maybe don't have. That quarterback situation is still figuring itself out, but overall, still really good. Top five in both. If you remember the receivers from last week, only two of the receivers that were top five in volume were top five in scoring. This week, it is 4 out of the 5 running backs. So the confidence there for those 4 running backs is great. Saquon close behind. And again, I would say I'm not too worried. I've seen a couple of people that are worried about Saquon right now because he is just the RB13. I know that's not what we want, but what's important right now through these 3 weeks, I would say, is the volume. And right now, he's RB5. He has 5 goal line attempts this year. the second most in the NFL. He doesn't have a touchdown on those goal line attempts. But a lot of people worry about that last year and even this year some, with Jalen Hurts taking a lot of those from the 1 yard line and such. But overall, this is going to get better. He had a lot of goal line touchdowns last year. He already has 5 attempts and just hasn't scored. He doesn't have a touchdown in general. He only has one explosive run. So that's where a ton of his value comes in. Those will happen. It's not like we're looking at Saquon right now and it's way worse. Maybe that offensive line isn't as perfect and his offense is still figuring itself out. The rushing hasn't been as valuable this year, even when they are running it a ton. But I feel like that natural positive regression is incoming. They're still running it a lot. It'll come. He's got top 5 volume. He's Saquon Barkley. Still a great offense. I wouldn't panic at all about Saquon. Next up is Josh Jacobs. He is the RB6 in volume and he's RB18 in scoring. Last year, around this time, it was very similar. Jacobs' volume was there, but the scoring wasn't. If you remember, Jordan Love got hurt. He did not score a touchdown for like the first 5 or 6 games. He maybe had one. And then the rest of the way, he had like an incredible amount of touchdowns in just as many games, basically, is what it was. The same spot this year, except he does have 2 touchdowns in those 3 games. The offensive line is pretty poor. He had 9 targets last week, which helps, but it isn't as pretty this year in terms of the volume being this high in the scoring because he has had those touchdowns and some of that rushing volume isn't as valuable right now because the offensive line isn't as good. The offense has been up and down. We would expect more. I'm not in a panic mode about Josh Jacobs, but what the point is right here is I'm not necessarily buying Josh Jacobs just because he has top 6 volume and there's 18th ranked scoring. The 9 targets help. Jaden Reed was out last game. The Browns definitely played a more conservative against Jordan Love. His air yards were down an insane amount, like literally 10 times fewer compared to week 2. It was incredible. But I don't know how much those 9 targets are going to stick. Obviously, those first 2 weeks, they barely had anything. So that's what helps his volume a ton right now is that one game in terms of that passing volume. So I'm not super excited by Josh Jacobs. It is not like last year where it was an easy buy in terms of process. That next guy is Chase Brown. He does have the RB7 rank in volume right now. He is RB31 in scoring. I made a whole video. If you want a whole breakdown, I would suggest going and watching that. He has 6 goal line attempts this year, the most in the NFL. He only has 1 touchdown. I do not think he will continue to be getting 6 goal line attempts in 3 games, given where the offense is right now. This offensive line is pretty horrid, especially when we're combining it with how they are using Chase Brown. His receiving is way down. The reason his volume is this high is because of those goal line attempts, so I don't think will stick as much. He will get basically 100% of the volume in this offense, which is good. It's just how valuable is that at this point? So much has changed with this Joe Burrow injury. So much, more than you would expect, I would say, which sucks. So I would say I would project Chase Brown to be a top 25 running back, top 30, but that's obviously not what you want to hear. Like that sucks. He's RB31 right now. I don't think it gets that much better. It'll get better. It'll get better, but not by much. I am not very confident in. Devon Achane is right after him. He has 23 targets this year. And to put it in perspective, so I said Bijan had the 3rd most earlier. He has 18. Achane has 23, so 5 more as the 2nd most. And then we have CMC with 31. It is a little big, it's a big difference. It's a big difference, but it is good and bad for Achane. So the reason he is RB8 in volume is because he has 23 targets. That's very valuable. The problem is 75% of his points is from receiving right now. He has 2 receiving touchdowns. He has a ton of receiving in general right now, but he really hasn't done that much on the ground. And it is a little bit different this year because Ollie Gordon is getting a little bit of that goal line work now. I don't think he'll get all of it. They are really creative on the goal line with his offense. But in an offense that isn't as good, the rushing attack isn't the greatest behind this offensive line, and he's probably going to score less touchdowns than last year because of all this. It makes me a little bit worried. Being a receiving back on a team that is probably going to be losing a lot helps, and they give him a ton of volume. It is a lot of not the greatest downfield targets or set up screens super well. It's a lot of what we saw last week, where at some point he had like 7 targets for 5 receptions and 10 yards. Like it might be like that sometimes. So he's definitely better in PPR leagues, but I'm not as confident in HN going forward. Like that RB1 overall that we saw with Tua last year, I don't think that's there anymore because of these different factors. So I am not like fully out on HN. He'll be good because of his receiving, but that upside is definitely lower because of the lack of rushing in this offense in general. Chuba Hubbard is next. A similar one to HN in a much less extreme way. The receiving is great so far. He gets the rushing volume and the touches in general, but there is one major problem. He's got the 11th best scoring, ninth best volume. That is both higher than what he had last year, and they were pretty even last year as well. But he has 0 of the 3 goal line attempts. Rico Dowdle has taken all 3. Dowdle's not doing too much, but he's taking all of the goal line attempts. And that is much more of a problem for Hubbard than any other running back in the NFL. Why? He led the NFL in goal line attempts last year per game, 1.4. It was a ridiculous amount, especially considering that Carolina was not a very good offense. They just got down to that goal line and they ran it a ton, and it was always to Hubbard. Always to Hubbard. So if that goes from the best in the NFL to one of the worst for starting running backs, that's what worries me. So yes, he's 11th in scoring. Yes, right now his volume is ninth because of that really good receiving and rushing volume overall. But without those goal line attempts, does it stay top 10 for long, or does that come back? It's really tough. It is really tough. 2 great games in those first 2. He had 2 receiving touchdowns, but then that week 3 obviously wasn't that great. A big one is next to finish off this top 10. We got James Cook. And there is one main takeaway with James Cook. I was out on him this preseason. It's probably one of my biggest misses today. We'll see how it goes. I'm not very confident in myself in terms of my James Cook take right now. But why is he doing so well? It is different. I will say that. Last year, he was severely over expected in terms of his volume, which partially would expect. He's a good player on an incredible offense. But his points per game expected last year was only at 12.6. It was like an RB3 level in terms of his volume. This year, it is at 16.7. So, yes, he's RB3 in scoring and RB10 in volume. But if this was last year, he would be RB3 in scoring and RB30 in volume. So, that jump in this offense makes it way better. Ray Davis and not Tyler Johnson, whatever his name is, are not taking as nearly as much volume as I would expect, and he's been taking advantage of it. So are they going to be scoring 30 points per game the rest of the way on offense? Probably not. They get the Saints this week. They might do it again. They probably will put up 30 points this week. But after putting up 30 plus points per game over these first 4 weeks, is that going to be as consistent? Maybe not. And it'll go how this offense goes. He'll maybe score a little less touchdowns based on natural regression. But overall, he's RB10 in volume. Like, I don't think this is going away. Do I think he's going to be top 3? Still no. But can he be top 5? Can he be top 10? Definitely. Definitely top 10. Top 5, he's a good shot with this offense. So overall, it's looking really good. That volume has improved substantially compared to it potentially going down with what I was thinking, where it probably wasn't going to get better based on predictions and stuff. But James Cook looking great so far. And as we go on, it just gets more interesting in my opinion. Javonte Williams, an interesting one right here. RB7 in scoring, RB11 in volume. He is healthy, looks healthy. He's been very efficient, especially compared to these last 2 years. And he's still overperforming, yeah, but I would say his perception is accurate. I don't think people are trading him and wanting the RB7 in fantasy. They're wanting that solid RB2, and I think he can be that this year. The targets and the volume will only increase with no CD. He's getting a ton of routes, not a ton of targets yet, but we've seen it in a game or so. And he's 3rd in the NFL in routes run for running back. So those are really good signs. He looks good in an offense that needs him for sure. It's not the perfect situation, but for fantasy, it works right now. Jalen Warren, another interesting one where he was RB4 in volume in week 3. Rodgers wanted to get him more involved, and they did. It's tough to trust. I would say his volume is severely underrated and extremely untrustable because of Arthur Smith. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it this year with Kenny Gainwell. He's not guaranteed to get those goal line attempts, anything like that. But through these first 3 games, it's been set up for him really well. He's getting a decent amount of targets. The offense has had a lot of red zone opportunities right now, which helps here. I don't trust it again, but right now, you wouldn't expect Jalen Warren to be the RB12 in volume, and he is. Next one is Bucky Irving, one that I think is just in terms of process, not even as much like opinion, I would say, seems like an easy buy. It seems like an easy buy. There is problems with the offensive line. It's not ideal, but when we're looking at the volume in general, he is RB13. However, if you were to look at it from a more basic point of view, which has its value here, I'll explain. He is 4th in carries in the NFL, and he is 4th in targets in the NFL. Last year, this was not the case with Rashad White, and he is clearly like it is not a 1A, 1B in Tampa. Like it's Bucky Irving is what it is. And we'll see that later on with Rashad White's ranking in terms of volume. He is RB13 in volume right now because he doesn't have a single goal line attempt. Am I worried about that? No. Because like Chuba Hubbard, it's not like Rashad White has 3 goal line attempts and Bucky Irving has 0. They've kind of just been a little unlucky in terms of like when they've scored and how. They don't have any goal line attempts. It's Rashad White having 1 and Bucky Irving having 0. Am I worried that that's Rashad White's role? No. Like Rashad White had about 30% of the goal line attempts last year. I think that 1 carry was just a part of his 30% compared to this being his role suddenly now. It wouldn't make sense. So in terms of the offensive line, it's not ideal, but there's a lot of injuries in Tampa. He looks good. He is good. His volume is great. He is getting bell cow work in an offense that is really productive. Like RB10 in scoring after a few weeks where it hasn't been amazing in terms of fantasy, and he's RB10 right now. I really like Bucky Irving. Marion Hampton, another one that I love, like similar reasons. No Najee now. He's getting bell cow volume on a top offense. A lot of times in fantasy, it's just simple like that. He's RB14 in volume. He's RB22 in scoring. Everybody knows he sucked the first 2 weeks. And then week 3, he was the RB3, I'm pretty sure, on the entire week. In terms of his volume, he was RB6. He led the week in routes run. He had 7 targets, 6 catches on those 7 targets. He was incredible in week 3, and I think that is more of a sign to come than the first 2 weeks being, especially with no Najee, obviously. But I think it's more accurate. And it was versus a good defense, too. So I wouldn't ignore that. He looked awesome in week 3. He's obviously talented. He's a first-round running back that is rare these days. And yeah, same thing as Bucky. The offensive line has some injuries, but the offense is still good. If they're throwing to him even a little bit and he's getting basically 100% of this rushing volume, man, he's not going to be RB22. I'll say that. Not going to be RB22 for long. Kyron Williams, he usually underperforms versus his volume. So that is the worry here, is because that first week he dominated the volume. Had one of the best, I'm sure. He had 95% of his RB touches. However, he's RB15 in volume right now, and he's RB15 in scoring. So that makes a little worry because Blake Corum has gotten legit work, and they've talked about and proven that they want Blake Corum to take a little bit more volume off of Kyron Williams. He's very goal line touchdown dependent, very offensive dependent. So he had that wreck touchdown in week 3. I think that's carrying a lot of the weight for him right now. If you take away that one play where he had the 10-yard or whatever receiving touchdown, that's tough because he only has 7 targets. Like it's not like his receiving game has bumped up. He's only getting 43% of the goal line attempts this year. It's a small sample size, I know, but he's used to taking 100%. So that is a big scare right now for me. I think his ceiling is definitely going to be a lot lower season long. RB15 right now, if I had him, I would be happy if he was RB15 the rest of the year. It's a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary. Alvin Kamara, RB16 in volume right now, and this is another one. More so, more so. That is scary. It is very scary. Why? Because if you remember at the start of the video, who had the number 1 volume last season? It was Alvin Kamara, and now he's 16th. And it's not a good offense. It's not a good offense. It's better than what I would expect, actually. Kellen Moore is incredible. I love him. However, Kellen Moore is not throwing to the running backs as much. He has one design target. Alvin Kamara, of any player, should not be getting one design target. I'm not telling Kellen Moore how to coach. He's incredible. But for fantasy reasons, it sucks. It sucks. He has an 8.3% target share. We're used to that being 20%. And there's two factors with this, which makes me think it's going to be this way. It's not just a small sample size. One is Spencer Rattler. With Spencer Rattler, we have a little bit of a larger sample size where that target share has been cut in half. And two is Kellen Moore, where he only has that one design screen this season. So it's a little less work there. A lot of those short area targets are going to Chris Olave instead. So that target share is a major drop off when he's not getting that RB1 volume, so he can be an RB1 in fantasy and an RB1 from the overall RB1 volume. Now it's just the RB16 in volume. Is he gonna stay as the RB23? And even if he does, like, his RB23, like, it's not the greatest in the world. We saw a really bad week from him in week 3. It worries me because, again, there's gonna be games like Seattle goes up immediately 35-3. It's not gonna be that bad every week, but that sort of game, and he's not getting those receiving targets as much, so it's a little tougher to count on. We'd usually expect if that were to happen, "Oh, well, Kamara's gonna get 10 targets. That'll be okay." Not as much this year. Another interesting one right after him, though, Quinshon Judkins. Start him because this is a 2-game sample size. There's a few guys in here that I included where this is all per game because Quinshon Judkins missed that week 1. It's tough. I get the hype around him. I get the hype. My overall conclusion before I just give the stats, Judkins is one of those guys, in my opinion, that I think he'll be a way better NFL player this year than he will be in fantasy. It's a little tougher for him to be producing, even at an RB20 level like he is right now, with what he's getting in the situation that he's in. So it's 2 games. He is number 1 in yards after contact per attempt on 28 carries. Incredible efficiency so far. However, are we loving the offense right now in Cleveland? Not really. He has a 4.8% target share. I'll bring that up a lot in these lower volume guys, like they are not getting a lot of the targets. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Like he'll have his days where he'll get a few, but like he had one in week 3. A lot of that work is going to go to Dylan Sampson, especially, but Jerome Ford also. Like this is not a complete bell cow roll and a bad offense. He's not going to be scoring touchdowns every single week. So RB17 volume is really good. I don't expect it to be that high, actually. And then the scoring is RB20. He can be a fine flex, and that's what I would be hoping for if I had Judkins. However, the ceiling, in my opinion, you have that rookie ceiling and that potential of him being very talented with like yards after contact stat, like I said. However, in this offense, without that receiving and what an offense we're not expecting to be winning a ton of games, it's a little bit tougher for me. It's a little bit tougher in this small sample size. DeAndre Swift right after that. He is underperforming with a great offense now, looks like, at least for fantasy, and a great offensive line. It's concerning. Like, this is kind of my exact thought of the preseason was like, oh, it's hard to rank DeAndre Swift much lower than like RB20 something because he is in such a great situation and he should be a bell cow. And yet still, he's not performing much. He's a good receiving back. He's a good receiving back, which they don't have too much of in this offense with Caleb Williams right now, or he's not getting a ton of volume. But for the long term, it scares me because he's RB18 in volume right now in a great situation, and he's only RB24 in scoring. If I had to guess if this improves or decreases in that volume rank, I would guess that it would decrease. With Monangai there, Roshan as he gets back healthy, I would guess it would be decreasing. He can be fine for fantasy overall because of the situation there, but I do not think he has the RB1 ceiling that you probably hoped for when you drafted him, like you do with any guy that you draft in that range. Scatabo is right after him. RB19 in volume already with the Tracy injury. He was RB13 in week 3 for that volume. So he can be really good with no Tracy, especially in terms of this volume. You do expect like top 10 volume maybe if Tracy's missing that whole game. So it's a good sign for the future, especially with Tracy probably out going to be at least a couple weeks. So it's interesting because this offense, kind of like the Browns, isn't as good, but he is going to get those targets and the goal line work and just the overall volume. He had 7 targets to Singletary 0 after Tracy was out. So that is huge. For the short term, Scatabo can be very valuable. Scataboo. Long term, when Tracy comes back, I don't think Tracy will just be written off. He was great last year, especially given his situation. So I don't think it's going to be a complete bell cow situation for Scadaboo. But overall, for the next month, I really like him. Like he'll be in my top 20 running back rankings, I'm sure, pretty weekly with the volume that he's going to be getting. Tony Pollard right after that to finish off this 11 to 20 range. One that I am not the happiest with if I'm a Tony Pollard owner. There is one thing that really sticks out is when we entered the year with no Spears, everyone was thinking he was going to be top 10 in this volume. He's RB20 right now. Why? Because he's not getting targets like at all. And this is something that with Tony Pollard, it's not like he is a Derrick Henry or a Josh Jacobs where yeah, we're not really expecting targets. He's started off his NFL career seen as a receiving back, and he has 6 targets in 3 games. And this is with no Tajay Spears, who, even though Pollard is a great receiving back, Spears is probably even better as terms of being a receiving back. So it is a major red flag for me because I don't think that is luck or bad luck in a way. Like this is the offense that Brian Callahan runs mixed with Cam Ward being an ultra scrambler and playmaker. He is not really looking for that check down. So I don't know how much work Spears is going to be getting if it is not meant for him the ball to go to him on that play. So I would say it's like Judkins, but worse with Spears potentially coming back soon. It may be a little bit worse talent at this point in his career, at least with how it's looked so far in Tennessee. The efficiency numbers aren't as good as Judkins is, at least. So RB27 in scoring, RB20 in volume. I'm not too confident in it massively improving. Genty is the reason that I use that volume rank, how it's correlated to fantasy compared to just looking at box score stats. He is 10th in rushing attempts. That doesn't mean the volume is good. He's RB22 in volume this year. He's running sub 50% of the routes, at least in week 3. That's how it was. 0 targets in week 3. That receiving role is not there. I don't know why. I don't know. He's a great receiving back, and they talked about how good his receiving was in the offseason, and they're not using him that way. So that's a bummer. The rushing is great in terms of volume and how he looks. It is just a horrid offensive line, and that's where all of his value is coming. So it's not a good offense. He's not getting much goal line work because of it. The rushing doesn't have too much value between the 20s, and he's not getting receiving. So he's RB34 in scoring. I'm not shocked with given his RB22 in volume on this offense. I don't have too much confidence, honestly. Like I would compare it to Hampton. I'm a lot higher on Hampton right now than I would say Ashton Genty. David Montgomery, goal line carries are still elite. Outside of that, it's a little scary. Another one that's a little scary, obviously, was incredible on Monday Night Football. Amazing. And you'll have games like this because the offense is really good and he's a really talented player. So his scoring ranking is always going to be above his volume, just like it was last year. However, last year, his volume was at an expected 13.9 points per game. He scored about 15 or 16. This year, that has dropped from 13.9 to 11.9. That shouldn't shock you, given Gibbs. Earlier, I talked about the opposite, how Gibbs increased a bunch. And as training camp news, offseason news, everything was pointing toward Gibbs being that main guy compared to being at 50-50, more a 60-40 split. So a little less receiving, a little less carries, a little less goal line work, or about the same goal line work. But overall, RB23 volume is worse than it was last year. I don't think he's going to be RB8. I don't think people are expecting him to be RB8. Obviously, he had one huge game in 3 weeks, but this will decrease a little bit. Travis Etienne is probably the most shocking one on here. I would say, when I was doing this, if you told me to guess where Travis Etienne's volume rank was, I would guess like 12th, and he's 24th, which is a little scary. He's playing a lot of snaps so far, getting a lot of those touches, but the volume really hasn't been there in this offense as much. He hasn't had too much of that goal line work, but the main thing is those targets. I talked a lot about this offseason. One stat that I used maybe more than anything was in this offense with Liam Cohen, he had the RB4 and 5 in design targets last year. Guess where ETN is? Number 1 in design targets. However, Lawrence hasn't been throwing to him at all besides that. So he has 5 screens already, which is the most, but he only has 7 targets. Only 2 targets in 3 games besides that. So that's what makes it really tough right now is he's not getting a ton of goal line work, and Tudin's taking a little bit of that, and the targets right now aren't anything incredible. So he's looked amazing. He's obviously the RB9. I do not think he's going to be a running back one on the season. Hopefully, this volume stays close to where it is right now in terms of his percentage of touches. Hopefully, Tuden doesn't eat into it a little bit more as time goes on. But right now, it's a little discouraging because just given his total touches and this offense, we would want it to be better than this RB24 rank. It's a little discouraging. Brees Hall right after that. This is kind of like ETN and Brees Hall are very similar, even though I would expect Brees Hall to be way lower. He only has 10 targets. A lot of this is tough for Brees Hall because of the Fields injury. Like we have such a small sample size for two very different offensive styles right now. So he has 10 targets. That needs to improve. The goal line attempts are going to be split up between this offense, between the quarterback, but also Braylon Allen in there. The offensive line seems legit. He has 43% of his yards on explosive carries, which is both like a good thing and a bad thing. But I think it's one of those situations again where he's going to be a better NFL player than fantasy for sure. But right now, his volume is basically his scoring. And I would kind of expect that this year, given the offense in general and just the inconsistency. He only has 38 rushing attempts, even though he's getting like all like the worry this year was like, oh, they're going to run it a ton. But does he only get 50% of the carries? And that hasn't been the case. He's been the clear RB1, but he's just not getting a bunch of volume still. So that's a little bit of the concern with Brees Hall. I'm not really in buy or sell mode with him right now, but the confidence is definitely lower ever since week one for sure. J.K. Dobbins right after that. Um, Another guy with obvious red flags looking at the scoring and volume, but I'll kind of explain why. He is RB12 in scoring. That's great. He has 3 touchdowns right now. He is RB26 in volume. The main worry is he only has 6 targets, and that's a lot for a 27% route share. So he's just not running a ton of routes. He has the goal line work, but only 4 catches on the year. So he's just going to be very touchdown and very offensive dependent. He's good, and it's a great offensive line still, and a good team. So he still obviously has that value. But the RB26 volume, if anything, it'll decrease, especially with Harvey coming on. I'm talking short term, it'll decrease. Long term, it's basically a lock to decrease, but he's not going to be an RB1. I think right now in the short term, he'll be a solid lower end RB2. And the long term, that's where I start to worry. Walker right after that is another one that's kind of tough, like Brees Hall. It's just a little weird situation. Those first 2 weeks, he played 38% of the snaps. Every time he was on the field, they basically gave him the ball, but he only played 38% of the snaps. Week 3 without Charbonnet in the first half, because after that, it's, kind of tough. Why are you looking at the snaps when they're up 40? First half, he played 70% of the snaps, had basically every single running back touch. So that's really good. This offense with him, he gets a lot of targets last year and a lot of goal line work. So far, the passing volume in general has been super low, and he hasn't been playing much. And then the 1 week he does play, like they're up by 40 points immediately on 10 offensive plays. So that's where it's tough. He has 5 targets. It's hard to judge like how his targets are going to look this year because last season his volume was actually 8th best, which would surprise people. With Charbonnet, he had the 8th best volume because he got so much of that valuable work, so many targets, a lot of goal line attempts. So right now, him being 27th in volume, hopefully you're helping that improves. He's RB16 right now in terms of scoring. I think this is an offense where it will not be a case where last year he was 8th in volume and 12th in points per game because the offense and offensive line wasn't as good, where the offensive line still isn't good, but at least slightly improved in a new rushing scheme overall. So that's your hope is you're just wanting him to take over this backfield after that week 3. He was coming in hurt, had under 40% of snaps, and then kind of proves in this week 3, hey, I can take 70% of the snaps and be good. He showed that. Hopefully, that is how it's going the weeks coming, and the RB27 volume goes back to being top 15, and he's RB1 again. Nick Chubb right after that, or Derrick Henry is actually right after him. So versus last year, another one where we're comparing to last year because it's important. He's RB16 in scoring right now, which again isn't ideal for him. He's RB28 in volume. Last year, he was RB4 on the 20th best volume. So his volume has decreased a little bit. Has much changed? When I first looked at it, the answer for me is no. I'm not too worried in this sample size. His rushing volume has been a lot lower, but I feel like more of that was just happenstance, how the game was going. But the one stat that did stick out to me is pass rate over expected for this Baltimore offense. How likely are they to pass the ball on those even situations, 1st and 10, or when are they expected to run the ball? They're actually throwing instead. Last year, in terms of games with over 6% of that pass rate over expected, so more of a pass heavy game, like a top 10, top 5 pass heavy game for that week, Baltimore did it 0 times. 0. Not a single time in 17 games. They've done it twice in 3 games this year, that they've kind of been one of the more pass-heavy teams in the NFL. So maybe a little bit of a concern there. Overall, not too much worry, like, the offensive line is worse, but not too much panic right now. I think they'll be fine. Obviously, we've seen that Henry ceiling even this year in terms of that week 1 game. Nick Chubb, when he was a low end RB1, he did it on insane efficiency. Like he was kind of like how James Cook was, kind of like how Dobbins looks right now. Like that's kind of how he always looked. So right now, him being RB29 in volume and RB30 in scoring, it shouldn't be too surprising given this offensive line, his age, how he's looked, his route share being only 28%. Like he's not getting much receiving. The offense isn't amazing. Like there's a lot of negative there. I don't have too much hope in Nick Chubb. And looking at the last few here, we got the Minnesota running backs pretty close together. This is by game. So, yes, there was the game where Aaron Jones left, but that was also early in the fourth quarter. Like, he still played a lot of that game. So, he is RB41 in volume, and Jordan Mason is RB31. Jones was not getting too much. I think he is a sneaky sell low candidate. If you are losing, say you're watching this and you're 1-2, 0-3. First off, I'm sorry. Second off, maybe look to trade Aaron Jones to try to get a starter for this next month because I think you can still trade him to, say, a 3-0 team and say, like, hey, you're winning, you don't need him right now, but Aaron Jones can come back and be good for you. I don't know how good he's going to be when he comes back. I don't think he overtakes Jordan. I think Jordan Mason's going to be the 1A, is my personal opinion. But even when he was playing, RB32 got some, like a little bit of a good receiving, but it was still like barely over 50% compared to Jordan Mason in the 42nd ranked volume. So I'm not too confident in Aaron Jones. I am pretty confident in Jordan Mason. That volume in the receiving is annoying, is how I would describe it. It's tough to judge week 3 because they won by 40. But when we're looking at the volume, he's RB31 in volume, RB21 in scoring. His yards before contact, one of the best in the NFL. His yards after contact, one of the best in the NFL. He's amazing in terms of that rushing, and they aren't stacking the box as much as he faced last year. Because we remember last year, he played against it a ton in that very injured San Francisco front and still was solid there. This year, against the Vikings offense, it's a little bit different, not playing against it as much. He has 100% of those goal line carries. He's running a decent amount of routes. It's just usually for cardio, not getting too many targets. Patriots running backs. Right after that, we saw Stevenson as the RB30 in volume. Travion Henderson is RB34 with RB35 in terms of scoring. His volume in the receiving is great for when he is playing. It's tough to judge right now, obviously, because how it's been. It has been a mess in terms of who's getting the snaps and who's getting the touches. But when Henderson is on the field, he has a 25% target share when he's running a route. That is very, very high and a good sign. He has 19 carries. It's not a ton, but on those 19 carries, if that's what you use as the qualifier, he has the best rate in terms of negative runs, only about 5%. Basically, he's had one negative run out of 19. And when you're comparing that to the NFL average, the rookie average, the Patriots running back average, obviously it's the best in the NFL, so it's really good. But even considering those things, looking at other rookies trying to get on the field, that's really good. And compared to the other Patriots running backs, that's really good. So there's some signs there that they will be using him more if they want to be winning, in my opinion. However, at the same time, I do have Derrick Henry on the tight ends in the back of my head with Mike Vrabel not playing him over Deion Lewis. So I get it there. One of those guys where if you're winning, I think he can be a smart trade candidate in terms of buying him because he can be incredible in the second half of the season. If you're trying to win week 4, probably not the best guy, but we'll see. Trey Benson, one of the most interesting guys to talk about for obvious reasons with James Conner going down. Some stats overall. In week 3, he had the 23rd ranked volume. However, with Connor there still playing a decent amount of the game, Connor was the RB24 in volume this week. So they had both the RB23 and RB24, and that's where I'll go to the Arizona total volume. Because right now you see he is RB37 in volume, RB35 in scoring. But if, say, he gets 70% of the Arizona running back touches, running back volume in general, which I think is fair, honestly, I would say he's more likely to get over 70% based on what we've seen. For week 3, he got 78% after the Connor injury. So back to it. If he got 70% of the Arizona workload, that would put him as the RB13 in volume on a good offense with a good offensive line, or at least an okay offense with a good offensive line. That gives me a lot of confidence. If you are wanting to trade him, which there's some teams that I've seen where it's like they have 3 really good running backs and Benson's their 4th, like congrats, I would wait until after Thursday Night Football. I think his value is only going to increase. Hopefully that ages well. But with Benson, I like his potential volume. He has been very efficient this year compared to his rookie season, especially. This year, he has been looking good. So I'm pretty confident. And lastly, we'll talk about Bill. Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt down here. My overall opinion, kind of since the start in a way, and I haven't changed too much on it, is just that he is a potentially better version of Brian Robinson Jr. Brian Robinson Jr. was a good RB3, low-end RB2 area, and he did not get too much receiving. He got a lot of goal line work and a lot of the rushing. He only has 16% of the routes this year. JCM does. 3 targets. He had a little below 50% of the routes after the Austin Eckler injury. So that is improving, but again, under 50% of the routes isn't like really what you're wanting. He's getting a decent amount of carries, but still not close to enough in terms of surviving off of carries in a good offense, because they have like a perfect quarterback for rushing efficiency, a good offensive line, and a good offense. So that rushing can keep him valuable alone, like it did Brian Robinson Jr. with no receiving. But right now, the receiving is still low. He's not getting the majority of the carries, and it's not like he just needs to beat one guy. Like, it's not like, oh, Chris Rodriguez got the most carries in week 3, but that'll come around. He'll get more. He's kind of fighting 2 guys with McNichols there, and they haven't looked bad. And sometimes I'm guilty of this for sure. We see this guy where Bill is like the most talented in the room, and we're like, why isn't he getting 80% of the carries right away? Because the other 2 guys, although they're not as talented, they're playing well. So they're still playing well. They're vets that are doing a good job. So it doesn't give me confidence that Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt is going to get 75% of the carries anytime soon, which will probably be what he needs. So long term, I think he's a good stash. Like right now you see RB44 in volume, RB33 in scoring. He's looked really good. His numbers have been solid in terms of an NFL level. In fantasy, it hasn't been there yet, and I wouldn't count on it until at least the second half of the season. That's my overall thoughts. Yeah, these other rookies down here, Tuden and Harvey, just quickly, great stashes as well for similar reasons, but with even more upside, I would say. They've looked good when they're on the field. Those touches are slowly improving. Still very confident in them for the long term. But that's all I got for you guys today. Running back volume versus scoring. Hope you guys enjoyed. I love doing this. This was a lot of fun. So I'll see you guys soon on Thursday, actually. Talk to you then.